Hi everyone, Michael here from Rogue Animal,
And hello, I'm Joe from Rogue Animal.
and we're back again with our charity live stream. This year we're doing it for various worldwide homeless charities. It's a topic that's dear to, I think, both of our hearts,
Yeah.
and one that we really want to draw attention to. In a minute, we're going to play a video from one of those charities just to draw attention to some of the work that they do and more broadly the challenges that a lot of homeless people face. I hope that people watching this can head over to the links, which will be in the description, and go and support some of those charities. Full disclosure before we jump in, though, this is our live stream, but we aren't live. This is pre-recorded. As usual, everything's been a manic rush, and so we've sort of had to prepare things in advance. But we will be around on the day of the stream. I'll be in the comments at least, and monitoring what people are saying. And if people want to ask any questions or anything like that, I'll respond there. Before we jump into what we've got planned for today, let's quickly show a video from one of the charities. This is from Centrepoint, which is the UK homeless charity. As I say, there'll be various charities from for people from other countries. They'll be listed in the description. Okay, let's just play this.
That lip on the bit of the windowsill is, if it was a warm night, I'd sleep there. It's marble, so imagine waking up on cold mat. It hurts your bones. Fell homeless late 2018. I had fallout with my family. It was hard. Mainly, I'd always find a doorway that had a camera in the corner, or people walking past that can see me where I am and know if anything's going to happen to me. The drugs that I was taking was just to block all that bad stuff out. It was a drug that just knocks you out to sleep. You don't feel the hard floor until you wake up, and then you wake up and you've got backache or you've got pain in your legs because of sleeping on cold floor.
I started working at Centrepoint Rough Sleepers team in the summer of 2018. And I met Carl very shortly after that. I remember seeing his face a lot at a local evening provision drop-in where people who are experiencing homelessness can drop in for food, showers, and sometimes just a friendly face and a chat. At first, Kyle was very friendly and was always open to a chat, but in terms of opening up a case and working with me for housing, not so much at the beginning. But I understood that. It was my job to build that trust with Kyle, and when he's ready, he can come to me. And a few months later, that happened.
A couple of my mates around my age that I was sleeping rough with mentioned Centrepoint as a place to come, so I came here to obviously try and help myself get sorted. If there was something wrong, they'll listen and try and help you with them as much as they can. It does help seeing the same person, because you do build the trust. If you see someone else every other week, they don't know what you spoke about last week. They don't know how you felt last week compared to when you sat with someone.
We built such a strong and respectful relationship. When he first started working with my colleague Amy, they were able to build that relationship much faster because Carl knew that Centrepoint was a safe space, and he knew that the workers at Centrepoint were non-judgmental and were going to meet him where he was at.
I first met Kyle around 3 years ago. He was working with my colleague Clove, who's the rough sleeper coordinator, and she was supporting with trying to get him into some housing. And I'd had sort of some brief conversations with Kyle, mainly because I was supporting Kyle's best friend at the time. I got more involved with Kyle. Unfortunately, his best friend actually passed away, and we supported Kyle through that time, and obviously it was just a really tough time. And for Kyle, you know, it was he could have gone either way, and he didn't, and I'm really proud of him for that. He's come such a long way from like the shy Kyle that I first met to where he is now.
At the weekend, I am volunteering for a homeless street team. Throughout the last 2 years of me being homeless, they were there as another support network helping me. They've helped me, I'm helping them, and it is different seeing it from the other side. The thing that's made me the most proud is getting my own place and getting off drugs. It was hard because For a year I was sleeping on my sofa. Only just started sleeping on my mattress because of being so used to hard floors. It took a while to adjust. Having my own place means everything. Like, it's a quiet place to go. It's a safe place, safer than going back to a doorway at night. If Centre Point wasn't here, then I wouldn't be where I am now. I'd probably still be homeless on drugs. It was like my first home back then, so it's my second home now.
Okay, so hopefully that draws attention to what is a very pressing issue throughout the world. So yeah, hopefully people head over and to donate to some of those charities now. Without further ado, let's jump into the stream. We do this every year, and we always have different activities planned. This year, we've done a couple of things with the community. One of them is speaking to various authors about their writing resolutions for the upcoming year. I guess before we jump into that, Joe, how do you feel your writing's gone this year? Do you feel it's gone to plan, or?
Well, I've done more writing than like I thought I would have got done, so that's a good thing. I feel like I made good progress on new stories. So yeah, I think I just got to just keep on making more time to do it, really, and then it'll be fine. Good.
Yeah. I definitely feel that for my writing, things could have been a bit smoother. To be honest, I haven't been doing as much as I should have been, but I have been trying to get back on with it towards the latter part of the year. So hopefully, going into next year, I really want to go full steam ahead and get some of my, well, especially my novel finished. So without further ado, anyway, let's jump into the writing resolutions. Hi everyone, we're back once again with some writing New Year's resolutions. We did this last year as a way of giving people a bit of inspiration. Sometimes going into a new year, it can be a bit sort of daunting with all the writing tasks you've got ahead of you and knowing where to start. So we thought we'd get some of the community together as we did last year and talk about some of the things we've learned this year as writers and what we've got planned for the future, and hopefully get people a bit more sort of inspiration to get working and get started on their new projects. So to start off with, I think we'll just go around everyone and you could just quickly introduce yourselves if that's all right. So Christopher, do you want to get started?
Oh, yeah. Hello, my name is Christopher, and I am a writer, director, actor, and I just like telling stories. I'm an all-around storyteller.
Fantastic, yeah. And people will perhaps recognize Christopher from our podcast, who was guest talking about his upcoming project in the Halloween episode, and also for one of the finalists from our short story competition last year. Jerry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I'm Jerry Salmon. I'm a trained journalist, not a journalist anymore, but I've been a journalist for 40 years. I've been not only been part of the journalism industry in newspapers, I've also taught it at university. So it had quite an interesting life up to now. It's much more interesting now because now I'm pretty much, apart from doing things around the house and making meals and doing everything, general dog's body, I'm pretty much a full-time writer. So because I'm pretty much retired from the job. So a full-time writer. So that's me. I live in the UK. It is actually pitch black dark at the moment. So it's raining and it's very windy. So that's me. That's where I am.
Okay. BC?
Okay, I have a financial background, but I've worked for government for almost 30 years, doing anything from events management, admin, corporate governance and empowerment, especially looking at Black economic empowerment, knowing our history in our country. I've also done a bit of strategy. And then in 2020, I think I just went through a meltdown, and just before lockdown, I resigned. Had I known, I guess I would have stayed a bit so that I can just work at home. And when I was at home, then I found myself with time and I started to start writing, because somewhere in my head, I've always thought I've got stories to tell, but I just never had time to actually explore that. So I registered for a short story writing course, which I did for a year. And then after that, I started writing. So I published my first book at the end of 2022, and then 2021, the second one. And this year, I did my third book, which are on Amazon Kindle, and also I sell, because I self-publish. So I also sell them directly from my site. And I'm currently exploring poetry. I never thought I could write poetry, but I found that I actually enjoy writing poetry as well. So currently I'm doing that as well.
Great. Actually, for both of you, where can people go to find your books at the moment?
All right, with me, as I just alluded, my books are available on Amazon Kindle, but hard copies are available from.
I have nothing in print at the moment. I have had two books published, one previously, but nothing at the minute. And both were available on Amazon, on Kindle, on I think one was for sale in Walmart in the States, and in America at Barnes and Noble, which you may have heard of, one of the big bookshop chains in the States. So, but not at the moment, but hopefully one will be published February, March time.
Pat, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Pat Marshall. I'm Canadian. I'm currently for the winter in Mexico because it's just better here. I write under the nom de plume Elaine James. I write short stories, novellas, and this year, a recent, I would say, a recent experience multiple times has been writing personal obituaries for people, which is something I'd never done before, and it's challenging to write the essence of somebody in 350 words. So I was honored that families have asked me to do that. So.
Yeah, that must be quite a moving thing to do.
It is indeed, yeah.
And Pat has been a finalist in the, I think, was it last year's short story competition?
It was for spring, yeah, last year.
Yeah, spring. That's right. Yeah. So you'll also be able to catch her story in the upcoming anthology as well.
Right.
So to start off with, I guess before we look ahead, let's look back a little bit. From last year, did you set yourselves, or this year, sorry, did you set yourselves any resolutions for your writing, any goals? And if so, how did they go? Christopher?
I try not to do that because I never know when an idea is going to hit, or, if I put that on myself that, this year I'm going to write 3 stories, I probably won't get it done. If I tell myself I'm not going to do anything, and then I end up doing about 4 or 5 things. So I try not to really put that on myself, because it just for me, it's spontaneous. A lot of times an idea will come out of virtually nowhere and it'll grow legs and become something totally different. So, I mean, I try to at least write something somewhere, to Pat's thing about the obituary. I work in a mortuary, like y'all know, I mean, so I write a lot of obituaries, and she's right. It's, it's often a daunting task to put somebody's life into a few paragraphs. But when it comes to creative writing, I don't know when the idea is going to hit me. It may not. I may just go into a reservoir of stuff that I have from the past and try to work with that. But I try not to put a resolution on myself, because much like going on a diet, it'll start good, but then it might not end up so great at the end. Wait a minute, I was supposed to lose 10 pounds, I gained 15. I don't know what happened there. So I don't know. So that's just the way I operate.
I think it's interesting you point out that for some people having goals is useful. It gets them sort of centered and something to work towards, and others can just be daunting and actually prevent you from doing the work you've set out to do. So Jerry, how about you?
So as far as writing goals is concerned, as I say, I now have time on my hands. They say everyone has a book in them, and I think it's true. And if you feel serious enough about it, then you'll get down and write one. And I'm sure Boosie has. As you say, you got things in print anyway and published anyway. I'm sure Michael, you are either working on something or you've had something. I don't really know what you've got out there. But I mentioned earlier I had a book published in the States. Well, I've been re-editing it. I've moved over to a publisher in the UK, and as I say, that is one of my goals, was to get that published. The idea was to get it published in 2023, but it's going to be early next year, so not far off. Didn't quite make that one. I've got a couple of other irons in the fire as well. I've got a couple of other book ideas, one of which is almost complete as well. So the one that's being published is a crossover middle grade YA. Children's, young teenagers book, and that, as I say, that should be out maybe February, March time next year. Another one is I'm just about very, very close to finishing editing that one, and I'm hoping to get, I'll be doing the rounds trying to get someone to publish that one, because it's an adult age kind of thriller story that I've got that's there. So that's hopefully that will be also out sometime in 2024 if I can get it quite right. And it's I'm sure you all know that it's a difficult thing to just to get it as you want it to be before you can send it off for publication. It's not an easy thing, is it? The writing bit is the easy bit, then the editing comes in, and that spoils everything. That's what we've got to do. I do have another project, but it's in early days. It's a crime story based on my career. Not as a criminal, I'm not a criminal, but as a journalist, based on that, some of the things that I came across during those times. So that's in very early stages. So that's nowhere near ready for anything.
Okay, Boosie.
On my side, I think it's yes and no. Yes, because I published my third short story collection book this year in March. No, because I think I got over ambitious. I decided to work on 3 novels at the same time, and I have not yet published a novel. So it became quite a daunting task to be working on 3 novels at the same time. So I took a break from that. And I started then working on the poetry. I thought I would publish the poetry collection before the end of the year, but I think something in my head said, no, just focus on promoting the third book and don't rush into publishing the poetry book, because I just feel I still need to add more poems before I publish it. I don't want to do something that is rushed, because this is my first poetry book. So I want to give it time to polish it. I also written a children's book, but in my African language, because I speak isiZulu at home. I'd never done a book in isiZulu, so I've done one children's book in isiZulu. So next year, there's something that I need to then publish because it's complete. It just needs to be published. Yeah, so that's why I say yes and no, because some things have been finalized, but others are just hanging out there.
Wow. It sounds like you've got lots and lots of projects on the go, so that's always always good to see.
Well, it's a bit inspiring, really, when somebody like Bruce has got a lot going on. It's quite inspiring, really.
I'm not sure it's scary.
Sorry.
I'm saying it's scary at the same time because I think I gave myself a bit much, and I realized that okay, I need time.
It can be.
As someone who's struggling to stay on top of one novel, I think that definitely is inspiring for me to see one with all those projects on the go. So Pat, well, you were actually on our call last year.
Yeah.
You've set yourself some writing resolutions then. How did you feel you stuck to them? And if so, what were the results?
Well, I did 150 words, so that's all right. Goal setting, it works for me. I use a program called Dabble that links to the NaNoWriMo website. And I write, a certain amount of words every day, every day. And this was the first year that I joined the NaNoWriMo November Challenge, which is to write 50,000 words in 30 days. And, I did that for 20 days, and then we had a death in the family, and then we sold our house and moved on to the boat. And it just wasn't reasonable for me to keep dedicating that amount of time when I needed to address, real life stuff. So I stalled out at 36,000 words, which that's okay too. I can't say that they're 36,000 great words, but it's sure a nice skeleton that, just yesterday I started, adding in the organs and, I'll flesh out a little bit. So I feel like that was a valuable exercise for me. I am not a writer by trade. I was a career bureaucrat. And so writing every day and reading and, trying to get in at least 1,500 or 1,500 words a day is a learning experience for me. And I need to do that to keep my brain in the game.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned setting yourself a particular goal at one point with words. Do you think that that's helpful to do to set yourself some sort of a goal each day, or do you think it's more sort of detrimental in the end?
Last month for the competition or the challenge or whatever they call it, at the end of the day, I found it. Like at day 20, I found it really detrimental. It was really stressful for me because I knew I had more important things that I should be doing and needed to be doing. The obituary for my nephew, getting the house packed up so we could move, things like that were more important. So then it became detrimental because I really didn't want to let it go because I'd done really well to that point. But for the most part, no, it's not detrimental to me. It's value added. I often, I set the story goal on the whole document in the program, and it tells me how many days I have off and how many days I need to hit a certain target word. Sometimes I go over, sometimes I don't make it. I care about it at the end of the game when I set out the timelines, when I set the program up 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, like I was saying to Christopher earlier, it's interesting how people have different views about setting themselves goals and whether for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. But but for some people that might be quite useful to have a tool like that.
I think you need that one, Michael. That tool.
I think I probably do, to be honest.
Yeah. So, what are your greatest writing achievement this year? For Christopher.
I was able. I told a children's story. I touched on it with you guys earlier a few months ago. It was a Halloween story that I wrote, but I wrote the entire story. Every chapter was done in a poem form, and I was able to get that off to Gnashing Teeth Publishers, and the response to it has been pretty neat. But like to Jerry's point, reviews don't always put butter on the bread, but it was something that I had never done before. Try to tell an entire story instead of doing little chapters, making it into different poems that all would come together to tell a solid narrative. I'd never done anything like that before, and to finally get it done and put it out there, and have some positive feedback for it, I thought was pretty neat. Writing a screenplay for a film that my daughter and I are going to work on coming this year, was another thing that, I challenged myself to do, because, screenplay writing, teleplay writing is a different animal than, let's say, short stories or novels. There's a lot of constraints in a screenplay that I had to learn about, and I was like, well, you got to do certain plot points at certain pages on the screenplays or whatever, and so those kinds of things were extremely challenging to do. But we got one done, and we'll see what we can do with it this year coming up. But yeah, those were two examples. And from just in the last time that we spoke, I think in Halloween time, I wrote two short stories. One is getting published by Mace Publishing, and the other one that's going to go also into Gnashing Teeth Publishers. And so, in just a short amount of time, I was able to do a couple of things there: write a poetry, write two short stories, and a screenplay. So I thought that was pretty neat. But like I said, I don't set goals because I didn't plan in January of last year. I didn't plan none of those things to happen, and by December of the year, all those things had happened. So there you go.
Well done, Christopher.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you've dabbled in all these different styles of writing as well. So it isn't just writing short stories or whatever, but it's writing poems and screenplays.
Right. Well, like what Pat said, I'm just like her. I'm a fan of writing. I'm a fan of writing. When you have all these things thrown at you in life, and trust me, like I said, I work in a mortuary, so I see these things happen every day. The drama plays out, almost on the daily basis for my job. So life hits you, and life hits you hard. But when you cannot let go of writing, no matter what life is throwing at you, you have to. It's part of your blood. It's part of your DNA. That's when you know that you are a writer. Whether you become a published author is a different story. But if you can't live without typing something, without writing something, without reading a story, the stories are part of you and part of your life. That's when you know you got something there, man. That's when you know you got something going. You got to keep on and keep on, because it's part of you. It's like breathing for a lot of us that do this stuff. It's breathing. Not every project, like Jerry was saying, is going to be a successful thing, but it is part of who we are, and it is part of what we're always going to be.
Absolutely. That's a great message, I think.
Well said. Well said. Well, to be honestly, getting back into it after quite a while. As I say, my children's young person's book, I took it out of publication 2-3 years ago, and I've been working on editing it since then. And it can make you quite downhearted sometimes, can't it? It's quite frustrating. So there was a certain Facebook site that I recently joined, asking for a short story, And I think that my achievement was your short story competition. And that was a real boost to my, to how I was feeling about the whole writing business. I was very, very close to kind of, I wouldn't say giving it all up, but just putting it to one side for who knows how long. So I never give up on them, but it's very easy to put to one side and then just forget about them for quite a long time. So to be honest, I would put that as, I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm on this video, this broadcast, but because that was the thing that's kind of really got me back into it. So yes, it served that purpose for me personally, and the prize money wasn't too bad either.
Oh, it's great to hear you say that. You definitely shouldn't think about giving it up, because that story is fantastic, and I know lots and lots of people enjoyed it. So hopefully you do keep up with that.
Well, I will.
So how about you, Boosie?
Okay, aside from the book that I self-published, two of my other stories were published in two anthologies. So one is called 320 Days of Sunshine, which was published by an entity in Devon. They're called Made in Devon, for the Devon Book Fair that they usually have every August. And the other was published by it's called Spoiling the Broth by Published Magazine Africa. And they took another one of my stories as well, which they're also going to publish in another anthology. So I think those were also, aside from my own book, some of the things that I'm proud to have done. Another short story was shortlisted. It was in the top 10 actually of another short story competition that I entered. So I guess, yeah, there have been things that have been quite interesting. And I also joined something called Mzansi Authors. What they do is that they go around promoting authors' books. So for instance, because I don't think I'm a marketer as such, I just prefer to write, but to promote my own books is quite a task. So joining the Mzansi Authors Society, because they then find opportunities for us to go and promote our books on our behalf. So those are some of the highlights.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting to hear that you've had these publication stories published as well. I'm sure it'll be very inspiring for a lot of people to hear who aspire to that sort of level, and getting their works out there.
Yes.
So,
okay.
As writers, I think it's also important to recognize when we don't get things right, and to learn from those mistakes. What mistakes have you personally made in your writing this year, and how do you think you can learn from that, Jerry?
So yeah, you did ask that before, didn't you? So I wasn't trying to sidestep it, honestly. But yeah, I guess one of the things that hasn't gone quite right. I tend to overthink things, especially when I'm trying to get something ready for publication. So, for instance, the title of a story. So the one that the crossover children's book that I've got a publisher for now. I don't have a title for it, and I keep thinking of some really great titles. Then I go to Google them to make sure they've not been published before, and lo and behold, yes, they have. So I'm running out of ideas. So one of my failures, I suppose, is to come up with a good title of a story that might grab someone's attention, because at the moment I'm getting nowhere on that. The other thing is, I suppose, editing. You edit a completed manuscript, and you think you've done a good job, then you go back to it and you realize you haven't done a good job, so then you do it all over again. So I'm not very good at that. Even though as a profession, as a journalist, part of my job was editing, which was great. This was other people's work. To edit your own, it's a lot more. It's much more difficult. So yeah, I think those are some of the failures that I've not quite got to grips with.
Yeah, it can always be quite difficult, especially with editing, to fall into a trap as well of just constantly editing and never being happy with what you've done.
Yeah.
Do you typically, would you say, self-edit then, or do you ever send it to others to look at as well?
Yeah, I self-edit. Yeah, I do because I always think that, and very often I do, but I think I try to think that I've got the self-discipline and the experience to edit something, but then it's all about. I don't want to be distasteful, but it's all about, I suppose, drowning puppies. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean, Boosie, about that? You've written something that you think is really good, and then you come up to it and think, oh, I can't get rid of this. I can't kill this off.
Yeah.
You've got to be quite tough, I think, and I don't think I'm that tough.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem.
Yeah, they're definitely right there. You definitely have to be tough with editing, and even though something feels great to you, perhaps it doesn't work with other people or whatever, and that can be some of the toughest decisions to make when writing, I think.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So how about you, Boosie?
For me, I think this is just learning that I should be careful about what, because when I started, I just wanted to be at every market, at every book fair, because I thought that was the way to go. And I was just trying to scale back and realize that I don't have to be doing that. I need to find relevant networks and slot myself in there. And also to learn to, because I think I feel like I've got time. And then I drag my feet, and then the next thing I know, the deadline is tomorrow and the story is half finished or half baked. And then it's like, no, I can't submit this. So it's just knowing that when I have an idea, just run with it and then get it over and done and polish it, instead of thinking, it's next month and I will hand it in. Like the competition that you had. I mean, I saw it, I think it was in May, and I thought, oh no, in 3 months' time, I've got time. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's only a week left. So that's something I need to learn to get out of, to say, I see something, work on it, pack it, and move on. Yeah.
I think procrastination as well.
Yes, it's my biggest enemy.
I'll do it later.
Yeah, it's so easy to put things off and then just sort of forget about them, isn't it? So, but you also mentioned having all those different projects and going to all the different book fairs and what have you. Do you feel there's a danger you can sort of overstretch yourself sometimes and take on too much?
Yes, I mean, like I mentioned, even with the novels that I was supposed to write and finish this year, and then realizing I think maybe I've taken too much, because also in between I'm writing these other short stories, for other publications, because you want to get yourself out there. But in a way, it has helped, because now I have the 4th book, it's ready, because I have all the stories that I've submitted. But I'm just not going to print them yet, but at least I know I have a book ready. So the short stories have helped, but I feel like I need to write this one novel, or at least 2, to show that I can stretch myself beyond writing short stories. So next year, probably that's what I need to just focus on one novel and get it out of the way.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So
it sounds like it.
So yeah, the same question for Pat. What was your biggest writer achievement this year?
Well, I submitted a novel, a manuscript, to a publisher, a big publisher, because I thought I'll go big or go home. And, you know, I got sent home. But I was given this really great edit letter on these are the things we need you to change differently. And I could see how from the letter that they gave me, I missed the mark that I hadn't realized that I'd missed. So it was a great feedback letter, and it had 5 points they wanted me to address. And so I'm going to pull that story apart and change it up a bit. I feel really positive about it. You know, they didn't ask me to change anything that was creative or my idea or where I wanted the story to go. That wasn't the ask. So I feel comfortable pulling apart and changing it up to meet what they need to publish. So I don't know if it's not a yes, but you know, it was great feedback for me. I'm coming up on 2 years being a writer, and I think that the learning curve just continues to go up, and that was very helpful for me.
Was that the first time you finished a novel as well, Pat?
Yeah. Well, I had one done before that, but you know, when I started editing, I realized it was just a total collection of crap. So I set that aside and just, it may go in the dump bin at some point, but it just sits there. So no, it's not, but
I think that first stage is such a crucial thing for every writer, sending a finished manuscript to a publisher, and even if it's a rejection, it's such a crucial part of everyone's journey. And the fact that you actually got some feedback as well is fantastic, because often publishers just sort of send a very generic response or don't respond at all. So
right. Well, and I've sent short stories off to some magazines and a variety of, and you never hear back. So you know that you're not in, but you never hear anything back. So it was really great to hear back. And I'm pretty pleased at that. It's a great goal for me for the year. And, I promised myself I wouldn't get hung up on when are they going to call, when are they going to let me, I promised myself I wouldn't do that. But you bet I was checking Submittable every damn day, sometimes twice a day, to see what they were doing with it. So, yeah.
I think the fact that you got feedback, it's a big positive, to be honest.
Definitely.
It's very unusual, and they must see something.
That yes, they were clear it wasn't going to work as it was, but it was great to get the feedback, and it left me in a really positive frame of mind. So I'm pretty happy with that, and I'll address the stuff they asked.
Who was the publisher you sent it off to?
Do you really want to know, Christopher? Harlequin.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
No, I only ask because I know that there's some publishers out there, right? That really they will only take certain genres or, and by well-known authors or, celebrities and things of that nature. And so they don't, the big dogs don't usually like taking risks on unknown projects. So it could be that not necessarily mean that your story was, in rejected for a certain for any other reason. They may tell you something, but it's more likely that they're looking for what is going to make them profit, and profit isn't always like a great story. Your story could have been the most awesome thing in the world, the next Dr. Zhivago, but they're not going to check it out because they want an already established audience. I learned this through the film festival circuits. That you could do a great artistic film, but if it doesn't have a superhero in tights, it might not get anywhere, and nobody's gonna really want to invest in it, because it's like, well, this is nothing. Pat is a great writer, and he's a great visual artist, but this is not Lord of the Rings. We want Lord of the Rings, and it's like, so that's how come when people tell me stuff like that, Pat, the story that you just said, I always try to point them towards the indies, because really it's indie film, indie music, indie publishers where a lot of these original stories are going to be told. That's why Netflix has like a whole lot of content that most people don't even know is there, but it's great television shows that the Black Mirror started off like that, where nobody really knew anything about it, but it got legs because of the storytelling. But originally, it was kind of relegated to that far off section in Netflix because it wasn't an original IP like Wednesday or
Yeah.
something, a Marvel thing, But
Yeah. No,
your story was
I
probably the great
Yeah.
story. It's probably a great story. Just keep on going with it.
Well, and I will, because that's my chosen genre. I write in another genre as well, which is also, some things are popular and some things are not, and we seem to go in waves. As society, we goes in fits and starts, what we like, what we don't like, and right now everything seems to be fantasy. If you want to be able to get in anywhere, it's got to be fantasy. And I don't read fantasy, and I don't write fantasy. It's not my thing. So I'm going with what I like to do and what I like to write. I also, I like writing other things as well, but only in a short story, because I just don't have. I'm not able to capture what I want to say in other genres yet. So we'll keep working on it.
It's interesting what you were saying before about publishers. In the UK, it's definitely a thing where a lot of the sort of biggest names are only working with celebrities and established names. And it's quite interesting because I was talking to someone who works within one of the publishers, and they were saying how the actual manuscript they were given was absolutely dreadful and it required so much editing. But because it was established name, they still took it on anyway. And I think that's quite a big problem at the moment for a lot of publishers. But having said that, the fact that you got feedback from a big publisher is amazing. So that's great. Definitely keep up with it. So Christopher, in terms of writing mistakes, what was sort of your biggest sort of regret this year? Was there anything particular you feel you could have done differently? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, a lot of my mistakes tend to come when I get this great idea, great idea, and I want to start working on this idea, and I just boom, vomit 1,000 words, 2,000 words, 30,000 words onto a page, and then all of a sudden I see all of the mistakes that I've made. There's character development and setting and everything else, right? Character development is probably one of the hardest ones for me, in that I really sometimes miss the point on these things because I focus so much on this great idea that I forget to populate it with a very interesting character. And character is where the story really is. It's, if people have to identify with the character, they have to sympathize, empathize, whatever. A great villain. So character development is great, but it's very hard in a lot of cases for me, to establish needs and wants of characters. I had this great story. I think I sent you a rough draft of it, Scary Mary, which was a screenplay, and in it, I got the feedback, like what Pat was saying. I got feedback from some studios, and what they were the studios would tell me in the feedback was, you need to have more, you got to flesh out your character more. It's a great story, great use of music, great atmosphere. The character sucks. You gotta, keep working on the character. So, that has always been my Achilles heel, is trying to really. But when I nail it, and I get somebody telling me something like, "Well, that character was awesome. That dialogue was great. You have a knack for writing great dialogue." When I hear that kind of feedback, then I know I'm on the right track. But it takes me a while to get there. It really does. It really does. So, my biggest writing mistakes often come with the development of the character. How to introduce them and things of that sort.
And you mentioned things like dialogue there. I think that's something that lots of people sort of struggle with. How, if anything, do you have some sort of resource that you'd go to, or a way of sort of overcoming those issues, would you say?
Whenever I'm writing dialogue for a character, even if it's a short story or a novel, what I will often do is I will write the dialogue out separate from the rest of the story. like if I'm writing a play, a screenplay or something. So I will write the dialogue out, and I like to hear the conversation. I will repeat the conversation several times. I never want a conversation that sounds artificial. Like I see a lot of television shows, movies, read books, and the characters in there, will say something like, "Whoa, man, that totally reminded me of that scene from Back to the Future." I mean, come on, nobody really talks like that, nobody really says those kind of things. But you hear that stuff in TV and movies all the time. I like to have a conversation where it's just sometimes it could be a spontaneous thing. Two individuals sitting in a park bench. One of them is on their phone, the other one is feeding ducks, and then suddenly one guy just turns to the other and says something just totally off the cuff. That kind of stuff is like, I think is great dialogue. It has to be very compelling, and I don't like on the nose dialogue, so I have to it takes me a while to edit dialogue. But when I do get it right, and people give me that feedback and they'll tell me, "Wow, that character that you wrote is Scary Mary." One of the things that I liked about it, you got to flesh out the character, but one of the things I liked about your story is that you really have a knack for using 80s vernacular, really having the characters talk like if it is 1987. And, but it really, I didn't like write it like that. I just wrote it like trying to be as realistic as possible, but not sounding artificial. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to articulate that, but dialogue writing is one of my favorite things. I like to listen to conversations and the conversations people have and the stories people tell and the everyday stories. When somebody comes to me into the funeral home and they're telling me about their loved one, and sometimes those are pretty interesting stories that they got to say. So I'll remember some of those, and I'll end up using that in a dialogue later on, where this character is driving down the street there. Pulp Fiction, think of Pulp Fiction. So Royale with cheese. That kind of a conversation. Is pretty spot on. I like that kind of stuff. So I will often get it from real life and put it out there and say, hey. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the best things come from real life, don't they? Just overhearing a conversation or whatever. So, Jerry?
So, yeah, you did ask that before, didn't you? So I wasn't trying to sidestep it, honestly. But yeah, I guess one of the things that hasn't gone quite right, I tend to overthink things. Especially when I'm trying to get something ready for publication. So, for instance, the title of a story. So the one that the crossover children's book that I've got a publisher for now. I don't have a title for it, and I keep thinking of some really great titles. Then I go to Google them to make sure they've not been published before, and lo and behold, yes, they have. So I'm running out of ideas. so one of my failures, I suppose, is to come up with a good title of a story that might grab someone's attention, because at the moment I'm getting nowhere on that. The other thing is, I suppose, editing. You edit a completed manuscript, and you think you've done a good job. Then you go back to it and you realise you haven't done a good job. So then you do it all over again. So I'm not very good at that. Even though as a profession, as a journalist, part of my job was editing, which was great. This was other people's work. To edit your own, it's a lot more. It's much more difficult. So yeah, I think those are some of the failures that I've not quite got to grips with.
Yeah, it can always be quite difficult, especially with editing, to fall into a trap as well of just constantly editing and never being happy with what you've done.
Yeah.
Do you typically, would you say, self-edit then, or do you ever send it to others to look at as well?
Yeah, I self-edit. Yeah, I do, because I always think that, and very often I do, but I think I try to think that I've got the self-discipline and the experience to edit something, but then it's all about. I don't want to be distasteful, but it's all about, I suppose, drowning puppies. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean, Boosie, about that? You've written something that you think is really good, and then you come up to it and think, oh, I can't get rid of this. I can't kill this off.
Yeah.
You've got to be quite tough, I think, and I don't think I'm that tough.
Yeah.
So that's a big problem.
Yeah, they're definitely right there. You definitely have to be tough with editing, and even though something feels great to you, perhaps it doesn't work with other people for other people or whatever, and that can be some of the toughest decisions to make when writing, I think.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So how about you, Boosie?
For me, I think they say it's just learning that I should be careful about what, because when I started, I just wanted to be at every market, at every book fair, because I thought that's just the way to go. And I was just trying to scale back and realize that I don't have to be doing that. I need to find relevant networks and slot myself in there. And also to learn to, because I think I feel like I've got time. And then I drag my feet, and the next thing I know, the deadline is tomorrow and the story is half finished or half baked. And then it's like, no, I can't submit this. So it's just knowing that when I have an idea, just run with it and then get it over and done and polish it, instead of thinking, it's next month and I will hand it in. Like the competition that you had. I mean, I saw it, I think it was in May, and I thought, oh no, in 3 months' time, I've got time. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, there's only a week left. So that's something I need to to learn to get out of, to say, I see something, work on it, pack it, and move on. Yeah.
I think procrastination as well.
Yes, it's my biggest enemy.
I'll do it later.
Yeah, it's so easy to put things off and then just sort of forget about them, isn't it? So, but you also mentioned having all those different projects and going to all these different book fairs and what have you. Do you feel there's a danger you can sort of overstretch yourself sometimes and take on too much?
Yes, I mean, like I mentioned, even with the novels that I was supposed to write and finish this year, and then realizing I think maybe I've taken too much, because also in between I'm writing these other short stories, for other publications, because you want to get yourself out there. But in a way, it has helped, because now I have the 4th book, it's ready, because I have all the stories that I've submitted. But I'm just not going to print them yet, but at least I know I have a book ready. So the short stories have helped, but I feel like I need to write this one novel, or at least 2, to show that I can stretch myself beyond writing short stories. So next year, probably that's what I need to just focus on one novel and get it out of the way.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So
it sounds like it.
So you sort of touched on that in that answer actually already, but in terms of looking ahead to next year, do you have a specific goal or resolution for your writing? I know you said you didn't set yourself goals.
Resolution for the year. Well, the only thing that I have, like I said, because I don't really know when and where the ideas are gonna come from. The only thing I have planned for this year is this short film that my daughter and I are working on. She's taking digital media and film classes at university, and so we put together this great story, and we want to tell it. So that's pretty much what we got, and it's going to be the summer of 2024 when we start actually shooting this film. And so we're getting right. We're gonna, after the new year, we're gonna start getting all the pieces together, and getting everything that we need to get this stuff done, and figure out exactly what kind of format we want to tell it in and all that. So that's about it. We got maybe do another rewrite on the story, because you all know how that goes. You always find something. I try not to read the story once it's done, because I know I'm going to have to rewrite it and rewrite it. But yeah, that's what we got right now. It's a short film we call Jackie, and it's a I like to take, like what Pat was saying. I like to take this idea that's already kind of out there, but then kind of flip it on its head a little bit. So the story that we kind of have right now is about, it's a zombie story. It's a zombie apocalypse, but without really focusing on the zombies. Instead, we focus on the psychological a part of it, where this survivor, is surviving the apocalypse, boarded up in a house, for safety, but then the the loneliness, the ghosts of the past, the things that the character has lost, those things are the things that she cannot escape. Even though she could escape the zombies, she can't escape the past, and all of these things come flooding in. And it's actually more of a take on stuff like the movie Castaway, but with zombies, instead of an ocean. And so, I wanted to, I would watch a lot of, zombie movies, George Romero and 28 Days. And what I loved about them was the fact that they focused on the character, but the zombies were very prevalent. And I said, well, what about focusing on surviving the apocalypse? And, why would anybody actually even want to do that? And this friend of mine, we went fishing, one time, and I'm not an outdoorsman. I grew up in the city. I'm sorry, I'm a city guy. So I went out there with him one time, and we're fishing, and there's a crab coming up on the shore there, and he just grabs the crab and puts it on in a fire pit and closes it and says, "Oh, okay, that'll be lunch for later." You just put that thing in there, and he goes, "Yeah, it's gonna cook." And sure enough, about an hour or whatever it was, he takes it out and starts eating. He offered me some. I'm like, no, thank you. That thing was just crawling like only an hour ago. And he says, "Christopher, if the apocalypse happened tomorrow, you would never survive." And my retort was, if the apocalypse happened tomorrow, I don't think I'd want to survive, And so that is where that idea for, writing a zombie story, but instead of focusing on the zombies, I focus on why anybody would want to survive that, and how would you survive that. And maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks, maybe the first month, you'd be like, okay, great, I'm surviving this thing. 6, 7, 8, 9 months later, yeah, there's no aspirin, there's no entertainments, there's no toilet paper. We saw how those kind of things go. What keeps a person going? What keeps a person going, when all of those things are fading? So that's the story that we wanted to explore. So hopefully, we'll be able to tell that story.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck. I look forward to that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. Where particular have you got in mind to release that? Where can people go to see it when it
we're going to go through the film festival circuits. That's where we go through. There's a here in Texas, there's a great number of film festivals all over the place that that really focus on indie storytelling. And we have the big dogs too, the Austin Film Festival or the South by Southwest. But my whole thing is to focus on the indie, because really, like I was saying earlier with the publishers, it's like the last place you're going to get original stories is going to be through the indies, because I'm not faulting big publishers or big studios or anything like that, because they put in a lot of money and they got to get their return. So they're going to focus on how they're going to get money. It's a business. So the indies, indie filmmaking, that's going to be, you don't see a lot of indie movies that much anymore. Everything's is a big extravaganza. That's why most of the books that when you go to Barnes and Noble and Borders and places like that, is books by celebrity authors, or people who've been writing books for a long time. And original stories just don't get told that much anymore, because it's a high risk on whether the audience is going to respond to it or not. But the indies, because they are independent and their risk isn't as high, I guess you would say, they will take chances on that. So we're gonna go through the film festival circuit, and you never know, even through those avenues, what's gonna happen. The director Robert Rodriguez, who directed the Spy Kid movies and Sin City and all that, he made a movie in Mexico for $7,000 that he got from putting himself through scientific experimentation. And he goes to Mexico, shoots this movie, puts it through the indie film festivals, and got discovered by Columbia Pictures. And next thing you know, he's making Desperado. And after Desperado, he's making the Spy Kid movies and everything else. So it happens. It happens. The actress Jenna Ortega, who comes out on Wednesday, was discovered on Facebook, and then, did little commercials, local commercials. And before you know it, now she's on Netflix's biggest, television show. So, it happens with the indies too. It may not, but at least your story gets out there, right?
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm hoping that you'll submit to the, Toronto Film Festival, Christopher. I would look forward to seeing it there as well.
The Toronto Film Festival is one of the premier film festivals around. Tellerud Film Festivals, and the Toronto Film Festival is a big one. You often see a lot of people, chatting about that, and you'll have some big names sometimes.
They're very independent submissions, so
that'll be cool. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Well, for next year, yeah. So apart from the things I've already mentioned, I kind of, which again I suppose is another failure, is that I don't know which genre to kind of concentrate on, to dedicate myself with. So most authors, I suppose Ian Banks is an exception, but most authors stick to a single genre. Ian Rankin, crime, that sort of thing. Doesn't write anything else. So far, I've written a children's book. I've written a thriller. I'm in the process of writing a crime story. I've got a sci-fi story on the back burner. So if one of them is super successful, then I'll probably concentrate on that. But at the moment, I'm kind of. But all these things are destined to land on someone's desk, and they'll either say yes or no. And if they say yes, then depending on how it goes, I suppose, then I may well concentrate on one particular genre at some stage. But at the moment, I kind of spread myself across a few different ones. So that's for 2024. I think a decision to be made.
But I think the thing is, if you're actually finishing all those books and not leaving them on the table and half finished or whatever, it sort of doesn't matter. You're writing them and you're completing them. So maybe, as you say, maybe if you're taken on by a big publisher, then focusing on one genre would be a good idea. But as a self-published author, I think that's one of the freedoms. We can sort of do what we want. So
yeah, I don't have any kind of pretense that I'll be taken on by a big publishing house, but you never know. But as a the first story that I did that was self-published. It was a thriller, the thriller that I've just been talking about and re-editing, almost ready to go to a publisher. But that was initially self-published on Amazon. It's called KDP, is it? Something like that. On Amazon, anyway, self-published. It came out, no problems at all with it, and got some very good reviews. Got managed enough sales to buy a cup of coffee once a month, something like that, from the proceeds. But it was, over time it was doing quite well. But then because it was getting noticed, there was an independent publisher called Endeavour, I don't know if you've heard of it, and doesn't exist anymore. It went bust about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. So it went bankrupt and was taken over by another publisher. But I withdrew once it went out of business. So well, Endeavour was a publisher. So this is the thing about self-publishing. The good thing, a lot of people think it's a mistake to self-publish, but the good thing about self-publishing, if you can get your name out there, some big publishers, big-ish publishers or independent publishers, doesn't matter, can notice you and kind of, offer you a contract, which is what happened. Unfortunately, they went out of business, but that's what can happen. The Booker Prize winner, forget his name, but the Booker Prize winner, his book is an independent with an independent publisher, One World. It's not one of the big publishing houses. And he just won the Booker Prize a couple of weeks ago. So it's not the big publishers that who are the be all and end all of this industry, and for authors, there are many opportunities out there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think self-publishing often got quite a negative sort of perception with a lot of people, but it as you say, it can lead to other things. And I definitely do think that the indie publishers are the ones that, if there's any sort of spirit left in the publishing industry, it's the indie publishers that you need to sort of watch out for, because they're the ones who actually will dedicate time to smaller authors and actually take more risks, maybe.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Boosie, you mentioned earlier that next year you want to focus more on novel writing rather than short story. Is that your goal for next year, or is that just part of your goals?
Yeah, next year I would definitely like to finish at least one of the books I'm writing, the novel. I call it a mini memoir because it's looking at one aspect of my life. My dad was a priest, and there are certain things that I feel as children of pastors, we get labeled certain ways. So, I just want to write my story focusing on the aspect of how we grow up as my dad's children in a pastorage and pastoral home. So that I want to finish and publish. But also the poetry collection that I spoke about and the isiZulu children's story that I've done. But also what we're looking at, because we also have a film production company with my niece, we want to turn some of my short stories, especially from the first book, which is called Triumph of a Deserving Person, turn some of the stories into a movie, and just to keep the company going as well. So that's in the pipeline as well. So I know it sounds like a mouthful, but yeah.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Where can people go to see the movie when it's released?
Well, hopefully in our local movies to start with. I mean, we've got Stekineko and Science Center. So we already have 2 movies that we are trying to get into the mainstream media, but we also are looking at just going, because there are people who do their own bioscope movies where you can go as an independent and say, I've got this movie and I'd like to sell the rights to you to just show it and give us some money. So we exploring all those options to see which one will work out best for us, because we want to make money out of it, not get 2 cents out of it, so to speak.
Fantastic. So Pat, what's your writing resolution?
I'm hoping to resubmit my story to Harlequin probably in the next 6 weeks.
Yes.
And I'm hoping to get either a rewrite or not a rewrite, edit, resubmit letter from them, or an acceptance letter. One of the two. That's usually a bit of a process with this publisher, I understand from some of the other authors who've been successful. So I hope to do that. I also have, I think I talked about this last year, even Michael. It's a memoir about being the caretaker for my sister for 20 years until she passed, and I wrote that a good year ago now, and it sits there and languishes. I wanted to really be a better writer before I drafted a first edit with it, and so I'm going to address that at some point this year as well.
Wow, sounds like you've got some quite big plans for next year then.
Well, this year will be our first year living on the boat, and we hope to cruise the Sea of Cortez. But God knows, I don't want that to get in the way of my writing. So we have bought the Starlink, which is working fabulously. Thank you. So I shouldn't have problem writing or uploading.
Maybe being out at sea will cut you off from the outside world a bit more and give you more chance to write.
Never know.
Hey, Michael, do you want to do one? Do you want to do us two? Writing red.
Yeah, sure. This year has not been great for me personally writing, in terms of getting things done. I've been juggling so many different projects and not putting enough time into my own writing. So my next year's resolution is to finish my novel I'm working on at the moment, hopefully. Which at the moment is a big ask, but hopefully I'll be able to focus my mind a bit more and get that sorted.
You can do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
What's the story about?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the story about, Michael?
The story is set within a world which has basically been ravaged by climate change, and it's about an authoritarian regime that comes up within this world, and the main character, one of their friend, goes missing, and it's all about their journey to try and find their friend. So hopefully I'll be able to say more about that next year.
Well, make room for it. I look forward to reading it, and make room for it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
You've got to find time to do it, don't you?
Well, that's it. Yeah, it's all about time management.
And I think mine is the same thing, just finding time to actually do some writing and do some because I do a lot of drawing, so I need to find more time to do all that really, and actually do some. Yeah, I think mainly it. Just got to find time to do it.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before.
That's my goal.
Joe and I are working on a graphic novel together, so hopefully that will also be a thing that we can release next year.
And what is that about?
You probably won't remember, will you?
No,
years ago when you
I wrote the
it.
script about 4 years ago, and it's been sort of lying around. So the idea is it's about the story is about, it's called the Oculus Box, and it's about there's an object which is called the Oculus Box, which contains a secret that's so terrible that people wouldn't want to open it, and it's about people trying to prevent, trying to find out what the secrets of the Oculus Box, essentially.
It contains perfection, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right.
Well, it's interesting to me how those things sometimes happen. You know, we put a project away. Everybody here seems to have that similar thing. We put projects away and we let them languish for whatever reason. You know, they just the time isn't right to tell this story, or we aren't mature enough to tell this story. And finally we come back to it and we're able to, you know, view it through different eyes. Maybe we had a life experience like Pat with her sister. Maybe you have a different life experience than you had when you first wrote it, but now, you know, you could come back to it with different eyes and, you know, kind of finish it off because now you're matured, you're experienced enough to do it. There was a story that I wrote, that one of the ones that I was telling you about at the beginning, Mike and Joe, I call it the Hallelujah Traveling Show, which was a coming of age story, 1969. A young girl whose father is one of these hallelujah preachers who sets up tents, as they travel around America. And this is during the height of the Vietnam protest, the flower power, and Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, and Charles Manson. And so, she grows up pretty much an atheist because she realizes that her father's a fraud. He tells her as much, and it's just like a money making scheme. But then, unbeknownst to everybody, a woman walks into the tent one day and a real miracle is performed. And that is really where the story starts to take place. When I first had the idea for it, it was a great story, but I just wasn't mature enough to tell it. That was like a decade ago, and I just got it told not too long ago. But it was because I didn't have the experiences of life that I have now, 10 years ago, to be able to tell a story like that, to be able to be patient enough and not in a rush to just throw anything out there, but be patient enough to take the time to develop, like I was saying, character, to develop the character, develop the story, inner and external conflicts, wants and needs, and learning all of these processes that I didn't know a decade ago, and be able to tell the story a little bit more successfully now, as opposed to then. To start off the story, my first line is I didn't believe in God. And the final line in the story is God only knows. So that kind of fills in the blanks as to what the story is all about. But the Hallelujah Traveling Show was one that I loved, but I just couldn't tell it at the time. I was frustrated with it. I put it away. I couldn't tell it. It wasn't. I was even thinking of giving it to another author that I had met, because I felt that she was like, well, she was really cool. So I said, hey, maybe she would, tell the story for me. I wasn't the guy to tell it. I had the great idea, but I wasn't. But then a decade's worth of experiences came into play, and finally I was able to see the story different. So Pat, being able to tell her sister's story, now after the fact, after the things that have happened, is a great example of that. You guys being able to come back 4 or 5 years later and try to finish that graphic novel, it happens because at the time we're just not mature enough to do it. The events are still unfolding, things are happening in life, and those experiences are what molds us as authors, but it bleeds into the characters that we're writing about.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Definitely. I think there's. I mean, it's really interesting looking back at things you've written in the past and how you would approach it differently now, and definitely, as you say, a project that we did so long ago now, it does feel quite different looking back through a slightly older eyes. So anyway, thank you so much to all that have joined on this call. It's been great hearing all your goals and the lessons you've learned. I think that will hopefully give a lot of people inspiration, knowing that it's okay to make mistakes, and that's a natural part of being a writer. So is there any last sort of things you want to leave people with? Any projects you want people to look out for next year or anything like that? Pat, do you want to start and with Christopher?
Depending on what happens, I would, be providing the link on Facebook and, under my Facebook page, under the Elaine James Facebook page, and of course under Rogue Readers and Rogue Animal. Should that be the case, other than that, I just want to wish you all the best in the new year.
Yes.
Thank you. You too.
Same to both of you. Yeah. Christopher?
I'll be sending you those links, like I told you, Mike, for the Hallelujah Traveling Show, the Mystery of Emma Villanueva, and then when I get Jackie, the film that I was telling you about, the short film Timba, I'll send you all those links and let everybody know about that.
Yeah,
brilliant, fantastic.
Brilliant.
Well, you follow me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, of course. You won't be able to follow my work at all anymore until, as I say, maybe March. but I'll be sure to let everyone know when it's out. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I'm going to, get down with the kids and try to get on TikTok with when the book comes out.
Yeah, it's that's definitely one platform which I definitely haven't got my head around yet, but I know it is definitely where a lot of the younger people are using the most. So a hurdle for a lot of authors, I think, TikTok. Boosie?
I'm also on Twitter, but not really active, to be honest, on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. Twitter, it's at Busila Coste. LinkedIn is Busingwenya. Facebook, that's where you really find, especially poetry. That's where I post most of my poetry on Facebook as Busingwenya. On Amazon, it's Busisiwe Aingwenya, because then there I use my full name for my books, which is Hitting 50 in Style, Triumph of a Deserving Person, and Waiting for Me. So all those short stories are available on Amazon Kindle. And yeah, on Instagram, I also have Instagram, but really, I think I really am comfortable with WhatsApp and Facebook at the moment. TikTok, I've not tried yet.
I'll let you know how we get on.
And the other thing, of course, is that you'll be able to catch both Pat's, Christopher, and Jerry's stories in the anthology next year as well. So that's another thing to.
Any timeline on that, Michael?
Say again, sorry, Pat.
Sorry to interrupt. Any timeline on that?
Well, we're gonna begin work sort of the beginning of the year. So hopefully, we can't give an exact date, but hopefully mid-year would be the goal for that.
Okay. If you need any help, let me know.
Oh, we'll definitely be sharing details as we go along with that, with all the authors. So keeping everyone in the loop.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
And yeah, thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Adios, Mexico.
Thanks very
thank
much.
You for having us. Yeah, and just to say, Michael, I mean, people must just write, because it doesn't matter whether you get your book published by the traditional publisher or self-published, but if you have a story, just write. And to Jeremy as well, to say, at times we self-doubt, especially as artists, there's always that voice that says, I'm not good enough. Just write and let the masses decide.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's a great message. I think a lot of
Christmas, everybody.
Yes, yeah, happy Christmas. A lot of people do worry about whether they can get published or not, and I think they need to focus on why they're doing it in the first place, why they enjoy writing, and let that be enough, and worry about these things later. Just get it down. So yeah, again, thank you both of you, and hopefully I'll speak to you again both soon.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Michael.
Nice to meet you, Bruce.
Okay, well, thanks to everyone that joined us with that session. It was great to hear everyone's perspectives. As I said at the time, I think sometimes as a writer it can be daunting when you've got such big goals, whether it's writing a novel or even finishing a short story. So hopefully hearing from those resolutions will give people a bit of inspiration and hopefully help them to set their own goals going ahead. So this is our final Rambling Rogues episode of the year. As it is a live podcast, we're going to be uploading it to Spotify and all the rest of them at some point in January. So, Joe, how do you feel about the things we've done this year in terms of the podcast and all that? Do you are there any particular things sessions we've had with people that are stuck in your mind that you feel like?
Yeah, I think it's been great, everything we've been doing. I feel like we've had quite a few good interviews with different people who are quite. I feel like they're quite impactful.
Yeah, I agree. But there have been so many people on the podcast. Let's just do a quick recap of the people we've spoken to this year. We spoke to Chris at the beginning of the year. That was great about the horror writing. But we've also had Paul Viner talking about his about how to become successful as a self-published author, which I know a lot of people will hopefully draw inspiration from. I know the majority of our community are self-published. We also spoke to we had our Halloween spectacular with all the different authors joining in and reading out stories from them. So there's a great library of knowledge that hopefully we've tapped into with all these people. So for people who don't know about Rambling Rogues and the podcast, head over and check it out. You can see all our previous podcasts on Spotify, YouTube, and all the rest of them. But a quick reminder why we're here. This is the charity stream, so people head below to the comments. Again, we're supporting various homeless charities, so hopefully you'll find one that is relevant to your country you can click and donate to. So without further ado, let's jump to our conversation with Mia, where I spoke about novel writing and the process, and hopefully give people tips for finishing their novels. Hi everyone, we're really pleased to be joined once again by Mia Botha. Mia is head of Deadlines for Writers, a writing group that sets various prompts every month for its members. Mia, would you like to start by just giving a little bit of information about yourself and your group?
Great. Okay. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me. It's absolutely an honor to be here. My name is Mia. I have been a creative writing coach for more than 13 years. And I always like to say I've coaxed, encouraged, and sometimes dragged writers all the way to the end of their novels, but we all eventually get there. And a few years ago, I started a website called Deadlines for Writers, and it was all about helping writers to finish the projects that they started. And it's a system developed and where we use deadlines to get our work done.
Fantastic. We know many of our members are actually also in your group, and they all say such positive things about it. So if anyone who's watching this isn't aware of Deadlines for Writers, they should definitely head over and check it out now.
Cool. Yeah,
Hold on.
No, I was just about to say we do the short stories, we do poems, and we do novels. So if you write, we'll have something for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love how it sort of encompasses, because I know not everyone likes to do sort of long form writing. So I love how you've got the sort of different sort of tiers of styles.
Yep.
So today we're going to be talking about the topic actually of novel writing. Lots of people, we're heading towards a new year now. Lots of people going into a new year often set themselves the task of writing a novel, but lots of people unfortunately don't finish it, or perhaps even start it. So what we're going to do today is hopefully go through the different sort of stages, and Mia is going to give us some advice for each of those parts of writing the novel, hopefully get people through the process. So let's just start at the very beginning, I guess. If someone is committed to writing a novel, where should they actually get started? Is it better to plan ahead, or should they jump straight in and hope for the best?
Well, that depends on who you are. I know I'm a jumper. I just open the document and go, well, let's see what this takes us or where this takes us. But there are writers who have to plan before they start writing. And I think when we talk about the stages of writing and the levels and who you are, you mentioned this hierarchy of what people prefer and what they like. It is important, I think, to learn or to know what kind of writer you are. And I think having figured that out in your process is such a huge step. So you've said, for example, some writers prefer the shorter form. And I think that's such a relief when you realize, do you know what, I'm a short story writer, or I'm a flash writer. And you can let go of this almost it's not even your writing compulsion. It's like everyone's been, if you write, you must write a book, and not everyone wants to write a book. So I think that's where you have to start, is whether you really want to write a novel or not, because it's a lot of work to do for someone else. So you must really decide if that is what you want to do. If you're a poet, by all means, go write your poets. If you're a flash writer, go and flash. But decide if you really, really want to write a book. It's too much work. I mean, we take an entire year to do it. I know there are writers who write nanos 30 days. If that's the kind of writer you are, go for it. But you must first of all figure out what your process is, and then Yes, jump onto that page and get going, and then figure out if you need to plot or not. Unfortunately, with all of these things, the only way you know is by doing it. So you may get through the entire novel and realize, ooh, I should have plotted this. Or you'll get roughly halfway through your notes and go, do you know what? I need to toss these notes and finish my story because the notes are holding me back. So I wish there was a one size fits all answer.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, some people do view sort of short story writing as a sort of lesser form, and that's sort of wrong, isn't it? I think it's getting away from that idea that you have to be a novel writer. Perhaps that is literally the first stage. Should you actually write the novel, or should you do something shorter form?
Yep.
So, out of interest, actually, how many of the people in your community, how many of them are novel writers, and how many of you say prefer the sort of shorter form?
That's a very hard number to guess, because we have a lot of people in the community who don't necessarily submit, or they take part in the short story challenge, but then they prefer to write their novels on their own. But in terms of, I do a challenge called the 52 Scenes challenge, where we post one scene a week. And that group is roughly between, we start in January, so I'm busy with the signups at the moment. But roughly for the last 2 years, we've been about 45 to 50, 54-ish writers. And this year, so far, we're just over 30 writers. So by January, hopefully that number will be higher again. So those are the numbers I can give you that are concrete.
Fantastic. So I guess the other issue is commitment. Once someone has started a novel, even though they might feel really enthusiastic about the idea of finishing it, actually doing that is a different story. So how can they see it through to the end?
So it's always the strangest thing, where I start with writing analogies and with gym contracts, but it's very much the same. Where the writers, I mean, you've all been there, we start in January and you go, oh, this year I'm going to be so healthy. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to exercise. And you sign up for that gym contract. And, like March to April is like, or January to March is like frantic, and you're doing your thing and you're there. And somehow by March, things peter out and it kind of drifts off. And that's where we start reducing the number of gym visits. And I see it with the challenges as well, with 12 short stories. In January, you have this huge group of people posting, because it's what they're going to do for this year. And then, February, a little fewer, and then March, even fewer. And usually by March, our numbers stabilize, because there are people who say they want to do it, and then there are people who really want to do it. And you also have to figure out which one of those you are. In terms of novel writing, the way we structure it on 52 Scenes is we have the 4 quarters of the year. We do the 4 quarters of your book. And the first quarter is fun. That's enthusiastic. You're excited. Your plot problems haven't evolved yet. You're just throwing things at the page and you're having fun with it. And then the second and the third quarters that's the middle. And it's the hard part, and it's the lonely part, and I call it the murky middle. And sometimes it just feels like you are dragging yourself through whatever it is that you're dragging yourself through. But that's the hard part. And I can tell you that's where most people get stuck, is that for us, it's usually from April onwards, I start really working hard to say, hey, where are you? What's your scene? What's happened? And that's also, of course, when work goes crazy, because January, we take quite a bit of time off. February, you can still manage everything. And then it just seems like everything's full swing from March onwards. So you must decide how and where and what you want to do, what your life looks like. I think that's a very important consideration.
Yes, yeah, and as you say, there are times where you sit down at the keyboard and the words sort of flow, and it's fantastic. And then there's those other times where it is like pushing a rock up the hill or whatever. So I guess it's during the latter sort of periods where people do tend to drop off. What would you say to people who are feeling sort of in that situation where maybe the inspiration has dried up a little bit and they want to keep going, but they don't have that same sort of inspiration at that particular moment?
It's something I've started, like with novel writing and with putting books together in courses. We've all read so many courses which deals with the theory of novel writing. So, inside moment and the protagonist and this character arc and everything. But something that we neglect time and again is, I call it mind manuscript, and it is that mental game of writing that manuscript and the drying up of ideas and the absolute frustration of what can we say, that's getting stuck and not being inspired and being so tired and then deciding not to do it at that stage. That's something we truly neglect. So there are a few things you could do at that stage is, if you must, put the novel just in a place for a moment and start just writing about your story. Don't try and write the story. Maybe just brainstorm a bit about your characters. Community. I'm a strong believer in community. We've all been told that, we have to do this alone. And we, writers are always these sad hermits with a variety of addictions living in a wood cabin somewhere. We don't have to be that. We can be happy, healthy, participating members. And that's where community really carries you through. We have something, as we're writing, we have a reading exchange. So your fellow writers read your work. So if you can find any environment where it's a healthy environment and it's good for you and the people who are commenting on your work are positive and kind, then I would encourage that. And then you can really, you feel less lonely. And it's when you get stuck. So I'll get stuck with 1 week, for example, and, I don't know what to do with this character. But then I'll remember someone said something about this a week ago. And I'll go, oh, wait, I can answer that question. And it just seems to propel you forward. So I do believe in writing together, writing about the story, not necessarily the story. And then just prompts, to me, are where the magic happens.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything in the idea of taking a break for a period and writing something else and then coming back to it as well?
Yes, there is something in that. However, the shiny new idea is a very dangerous thing. The shiny new idea usually appears when the current manuscript becomes difficult and all those plot holes start appearing and you realize, oh, this is a big fix and stuff. Then the shiny new idea pops up and the shiny new idea is beautiful. Oh, it's going to be so easy. It's going to be so brilliant. But 3 months down the line, you're going to be in the same spot with the shiny new idea. So you must do nothing. But I will always strongly encourage you to finish your work, because not finishing stories also becomes a habit. And then you end up, proud owner myself, of several unfinished manuscripts. And it's, 17,000 words, maybe 13,000 words. And I'll come back to it, but you rarely ever do. So I do believe in taking a break. Rest is important. But as long as you finish your work, that is just something I'm a little bit particular about.
Yes, yeah, and perhaps the best approach would be just to take on a small project rather than anything too enormous, and then come back.
Yeah, like do it. That would, my same rule would go, is either try to do 3 flash stories and start and finish them. Do a short story, but start and finish the short story, and then come back to your novel. And we like sometimes having two stories simultaneously. If that works for you, it works for you. But most of the time, it's just another form of procrastination.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess the next stage is that the novel is finished, which is a fantastic achievement in itself, because most people don't even, come halfway to finishing a novel. But now there's the issue of editing, and whether is self-editing enough, or is it always better to pay for expert help?
Big question, because there are quite often very large sums of money involved.
Yes.
So when it comes to editing, so first of all, when you have finished a book, you do get to pause for a moment, pat yourself on the back, pop the champagne, use the fancy tea, whatever your form of celebration is. But that is a huge accomplishment, because like you said, very few people actually really get to finish the book. So when all these stages you speak about have different levels of different kinds of fear. but the fear never changes. So first of all, it's the fear of the first book. Can I do it? It's the fear of finishing the book. Oh my goodness, now I have to submit it. Or will the agents like it? Or what will my family say? And then, second book, you have your fears, third book, and so forth. We have all of these fears, so they just change. So when you're finished with your story, there's a whole, it's like leveling up in your fear level. It's like a new game, level in the game. So the fear that comes out of that is this whole, what do I do with it now? So the fear is going to hold you back. So either you're going to keep editing and it's never going to be right and it's never going to be perfect and you're going to keep going. Or is that fear of, I have to submit, I have to edit. And then, of course, you're going to put it in the drawer and go back to a new project because it's safer and it keeps, you don't have to take any risks. So when it comes to editing, you have to be very clear on what kind of editing you're doing at that stage, because most of the time, at the end of draft one, you're still editing at story level. You're still fixing continuity, you're fixing plot, you're strengthening character arcs, building on your setting, fixing world building. So that's still very much story editing. That you can do a developmental edit or an appraisal at that stage of your story. But my rule of thumb with these things is always to say that, is it the best that I can make it? If I know there are problems in the story, I need to fix them first. Or if I don't know how to fix them, I can ask for help with that. But you need to be very specific about what you're doing. There's no point in having your first draft and then sending it off to an editor who's going to proofread and copy edit for you if the story isn't right. There's a quote I like to use where they say, cleaning your house while your kids are home is like brushing your teeth while eating Oreos. And I don't know who said it. I think it's a Scary Mommy quote, but the same thing happens. So paying someone to fix typos and edit grammar while the story isn't right is like brushing your teeth while eating Oreos. It's still too messy. It doesn't going to work. Okay. So that's where you have to get your order of things right. So, and with edits, if you start looking into editing and when you approach an editor, be very specific about what you're going to get. Is it a developmental edit? Is it a proofread edit? And we all have a friend who did a semester of English Lit somewhere and they're going to reckon they're an editor, but this is truly because it's a rather hefty sum of money involved. I would say do your research on your editor very, very well and make sure that there are people who you can verify who have used that person, because it is, like I said, and it's not the cheapest part of the process, but it's incredibly worthwhile. And I'm a firm believer in when your story is ready to give it to someone who will make it better.
Absolutely. And what's the best way of knowing that the story is ready to go to an editor, would you say?
It's not very easy to judge that, but that also comes with experience. So the more times you've done this process, the more experienced you will get at knowing, I know I've done the best with the story that I can. I see it with my clients as well. So I'll have students who come for an appraisal the first time, and I can see this is still, they've still got a lot of work to do on this manuscript. And then when I read their manuscripts, the second or a third manuscript, I can see how they've grown and evolved. And because the better quality manuscript you give to an editor, the better quality work they can give back to you. So like I said, go and really, really scrutinize the story. And is the story the best you can make it? Or do you need help? Because that's also, you'll get to a point where you've almost done all the courses you can possibly do. And then looking at something like an appraisal or a developmental edit is like kind of taking all of that theory and putting it into practice. And then the editor will be able to say what you can do. But I wish there was a checklist where I could say, check, 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 your story is ready. But it needs to be the best that you can make it. And that depends on where you are in your skill level.
And I guess the other sort of danger with that sort of a self-editing stage is that you can get to the point where you're in the trap of constant editing and never being happy with the product. So yep. How do you avoid that?
That's a little bit the perfectionism. And it's like the opposite of not starting because you haven't plotted enough, or you haven't done enough courses, or you haven't read enough books. It's this where we're constantly telling ourselves, I'm not ready, I have to do more, it has to be perfect. It's just another form of procrastination. There is, I think when you get to the big leagues and you've got these traditional publishers clamoring for your books and you've got these automatic deadlines from them for the publishing process, it's amazing to see how quickly a book goes through through the system, whereas it's still a long process. But, you know, where traditionally we would write for 2 or 3 years on a manuscript, you know, you'll see they're doing a book a year. That's a huge momentum or huge pace to keep up. And that is, it's difficult. I wish I knew. Michael, I forgot your question, actually, what you were asking me.
It's about the editing trap and how to avoid.
How to avoid perfectionism. It's very, very difficult. At some point, you're going to have to give yourself a hard deadline and say that this is the best that I'm going to make it, and you need to go from there. And you need to submit, get feedback on your work, and know what it is going to be.
Yeah.
That's, at this stage, the opposite of this is people who publish too quickly. And I think that's with self-publishing where we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot, is we become very impatient. And then we want to get that book out there because we're on this imaginary timeline. And that's where we get into trouble. So it's the two sides of the coin, the one where we're holding back and we're not ready to let go, and the other one where we're letting go too quickly. It's pretty impossible thing being a writer.
Yes, yeah. And it is a position that I've been myself, to be honest. I mean, finishing a novel and being unable to sort of let it go, because I guess you just feel that there's always something better that you can do with it. But I think when you get to the point where you're just editing individual words and it's not really making a great deal of difference, that's when you should let it go.
Yeah. You'll really get to a point. There's like this hierarchy that you go through as well. Like the first edit is this, you're fixing things because you're physically, it's continuity that you're getting wrong. It's that stuff. But literally when you start moving commas around and going, should this be a colon or whatever, that's where you know you're wasting your own time. Let it go.
Definitely. So once an author is actually happy with their manuscript, they have two options. They can either go down the route of traditional publication or they can self-publish. Let's start with the first. Do you have any advice to people approaching a publisher or an agent?
Perseverance, tenacity, research. I was speaking to, we've just done this class with the group finishing 52 scenes this year. So I spoke to one of my students and she had attended a little seminar on publication and traditional publishing. And the agent there said she receives 1,000 query letters a week. And she probably published about 5 novels in the course of the year. So that number should give you an idea of where you're sitting. It feels a little bit impossible. And it does feel discouraging. It's like, man, how am I ever going to get out there? But there are new authors published every year. If your book, that's also something else, which is like I'm a stickler and I say, follow the rules. If they want you to follow this, use this submission form and use this format and your query letter must look like this, you do exactly what they want you to do. But something I've seen time and again, that is, if your story is good enough, and your book has that spark, it transcends all the rules, all the systems, everything, and that book just shoots. So my advice, this is very cruel, but to my writers is, if you want to get published, forget about getting published. Make your book the best it can be. Focus on your craft. You're in control of craft. You're not in control of the publishing process, because books get rejected for all kinds of reasons, and very rarely it has anything to do with the story. So if your book is literally the best thing since ever, that book just does things and goes places you would never have expected it to. So make your book the best, and then you don't stop. It's a numbers game. Traditional publishing is, the more you get out there, the more feedback you start getting, you start building up traction. I do believe that, but it's a long road and it's a difficult road, and it's discouraging. I mean, in the old days, you would get your pre-printed form letter to say, thank you, no, thank you. Today they go, if you haven't heard from us in 4 to 6 weeks, assume we've passed on the process. So you don't even get the form letter.
Yeah. I something that we've often said to a lot as well is that, I guess, during that stage when you're feeling discouraged, just remember why you're doing it in the first place, that you enjoy writing, and maybe forget about the wider dreams and just focus on that.
Yep. That is it. Publishing is it is amazing, and it's a fantastic accolade. And for someone to want to invest money in your book is a huge thing. I'm still very much in love with the traditional publishing process, and it's beautiful. But it's such a small little part of the process, whereas you must write for love, for enjoyment, for absolute and that translates into your book. That is the make your book the best it can be. Is forget about the outside stuff. Focus on this.
Yes.
The you part.
Definitely. And I know from experience as well that the process of going to different agents can feel a bit sort of soul destroying at the time, because you're sort of having to dissect your book, and they've all got different requirements, as you say, and it's not always the most pleasant process, but it is also, I guess, essential if you want to be traditionally published. So if people decide not to go down the traditional route of publishing, they have the other option, of course, of self-publishing. Now, we could talk about that for a long time, but just to give a sort of general overview, what would your advice be to people looking to self-publish?
Okay, so the internet is always very aggressively divided into two parts. And if you had to ask a traditionally published author whether you should traditionally publish or self-publish, they will very, very, very aggressively tell you that traditional publishing is the only way to go. Same goes for if you go into any indie group and go, oh, I'm going to traditionally publish, they will, just give you 112 reasons why you should never do that. The only thing I want you to keep in mind is that you have to do what is right for you. Don't think about your best friend in the entire world could decide to self-publish or traditionally publish, and you want to follow a different route. It is important that you follow that route that is right for you. They both have pros, they both have cons, so neither one is free sailing and someone is going to do it for you. There is work involved on both sides. Self-publishing, I think, is an amazing path to follow. It gives you a lot of freedom. It is a bit techy, so you have to learn things, but it's also not impossible. And there are people who do help you with parts of the process. You can say you want to get someone to help you format your manuscript. You can find someone who offers that service. The only thing I would tell you never ever to do, and this is where it gets murky between self-publishing and traditionally published, is these vanity publishers who masquerade as traditional publishers. Don't. There is no place in the world where that's right. So I'm seeing quite often we have writers who they're trying to fund their own writing career by publishing other people's books. So you'll suddenly see this very boutique publishing house popping up, and it's so grand and so glamorous. But meanwhile, it's just an author trying to get their own book out there. And when you do the payments and the money and stuff, that's basically what you're funding, and then that author disappears because 110 things have gone wrong in their life, and they're not paying out royalties as they're supposed to pay out and stuff. So just do your research so carefully before you work with any company that has any online publishing service. That would be my biggest advice to you. It's very quick to put up a website with a payment portal and take it down 2 days later, and those people disappear into the ether. So research is really, really important. Self-publishing, given its name, you do a lot of it, or almost all of it yourself. If you do want to work with a company who purely offers a self-publishing service, it can get expensive. As a first-time author with your fiction book especially, getting that money back is a little bit tricky. You need to have a very big, almost business plan for your book, and it's not just one book. You're going to need more than one book to really start making money off self-publishing. Non-fiction, a non-fiction self-published book almost has a different function. It becomes like a business card and part of your authority statement. But to self-publish fiction, the chances of it being this crazy huge bestseller off day one is not that big. So you need to just watch your money as you go. I think that's where we are with that. And then just stay away from the vanity publishers. That just doesn't work, because you pay for it twice. So they make you pay. So that's how it works. With self-publishing, you pay for everything, but you get all the profit. With traditional publishing, you pay for nothing, but you get a part of the profit. They give you 10% or 13%. With a hybrid publisher, they make you pay for the self-published with a deal as it would with a self-published deal, and then they take part of your profit. So you basically pay for it twice. Just stay away from that.
Yeah.
For the rest, follow your heart and be prepared to work.
Definitely. And you mentioned all these vanity publishers and people masquerading as publishers. Are you going to any sort of large, well, not any, but most large writing groups on Facebook, and you'll find in the responses to anyone posting about their books, you'll just constant spam from people saying they'll publish them or they'll offer these services. And I think most of the time they're too good to be true with what they're offering.
I mean, a ghostwriter, I tell you, you can hire a ghostwriter for a nominal fee at this point. And it's just, that's the new thing that I'm getting a lot. I haven't received those before, but I have lots of offers for ghostwriters at this point. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'll nothing wrong with a ghostwriter if you want to do that. But it's just amazing suddenly to see how many people are willing to do it for $100 or so, which that's a scam. Please stay away. That's not what a ghostwriter costs.
But I think there's also the issue for some people, self-publishing, they don't think beyond the idea of just putting the book out there. And there is, as you say, so much work involved in that. And you do need a business plan, and you do need to set up your own sort of processes for getting the book out there and spreading the word. So how much sort of business knowledge do you think is important for people wanting to self-publish their works?
I don't think it's for self-publishing only. I think for traditional publishing as well, you have to be business-minded about your book. It's not this pure artistic endeavor where you hand over this, like, vellum parcel to the publisher and they go do magic for you. You also have to be very, very strategic about your decisions and your thinking. It's a whole other ball game, and it requires a lot of research, and it requires a lot of reading. And I would just get onto the internet and I'd start reading as much as possible. You'll quickly learn this is serious, this is a money-making scam, this is serious, this I can take note of, and stuff like that. So I just can't remember who the quote is, but it's a quote that says, in the beginning, to self-publish was considered an act of desperation, where today it's considered a strategic business move. And that is just always how you have to think of it. That's why publishers reject books, is because it doesn't make business sense to them. It can be romantic and artistic and beautiful, but if it isn't something they can sell and ultimately it's a business, then it's not going to work for them. And you have to have the same mindset when you go into any self-publishing. How am I going to sell this? Who's the client? Who's the ideal reader? Who's going to ultimately buy this book? And it's hard for us as writers to do. So it's a skill you have to go learn, just like you could learn how to show and tell, how to do all of these, how to build your own author site if you need to. It's definitely something you can learn to do. You must decide whether you want to learn or whether you want to pay for that service.
And how important do you think the idea of having some sort of following already is if you were to put a self-published book out there? Do you think it's important to build something up and then release, or build it up as you go through releasing books?
You see, that's always the challenge for fiction writers, because with nonfiction, I can blog about my subject matter or my topic and I will build up a following in that way. But as a fiction writer, what are you going to blog about without putting your work out? So that's sometimes what's a little bit difficult for us as writers. A publisher will always appreciate, or, at some point, I don't say they won't take the book, but they're definitely going to be more prone to take someone who has a social media following. That's why these celebrity books and these big famous people books and everything do so well, is because those people have a following and they have people who will buy the books. So for fiction, it's a bit trickier for us. Any book that I'm going to get back to that point about, if your book is good enough, it transcends all the rules. If your story is good enough, amazing enough, brilliant enough, they'll go, do you know what? I'm going to have enough backing for this book. It'll be fine. And your book that's why you still get authors who have no social media following, who just have these bestsellers and then they have their social media following. So I'm going to say, if you have to choose between tweeting and writing, please choose the writing.
Definitely, yes. I think that's a very important message.
It's such a catch-22, but that's what happens, is we get so caught up in the tweeting and the building the author site. That's like 3 days a week, and we have like 1 day a week for writing. And ultimately, what are you? You're a writer. So go make the book good. Yes, you need you need the following and you need the profiles and stuff, but if your book is good enough, man.
Yes, yeah, and it is so easy to procrastinate. I know even sort of very established authors, even I think George R. R. Martin, I remember seeing an interview saying he spent half his time checking his emails rather than actually writing.
I know, and
But it's such an easy
yeah.
trap to fall into.
I mean, it's like, oh, it's the stuff that I do instead of writing. It's it's sad, but yes, we do it.
Yes. But yeah, thank you so much for talking through these different points with me. I mean, we've gone through a very condensed view of writing a novel. Obviously, if people want more assistance and more help, what can they do with Deadlines for Writers in terms of novel writing?
Well, with Deadlines, we have got, like I said, we're starting with our 52 Scenes novel writing challenge, where we slow down the process of writing a novel. I know there's 30 days with Nano, and there are 90-day book programs and 100-day book programs. We write over a year because I have a full-time job, I have a family, I have kiddos, I have all of those, and I have to write in between of that. As romantic as 90 days to myself and my writing sound, it's not going to happen in my life. So 52 Scenes was designed and developed. It's this deadline-driven system that'll help you write while you keep your day job, while you look after your kids, while you have all of those. And then we go through all of this. So what you basically just condensed in a very short interview, we start at the beginning, we write the book, and we go through all the way to the how to get to the end process and what you do once you've gotten there. Okay.
Fantastic.
So welcome to join us anytime.
And we'll put a link in the description for people to check out Deadlines for Writers. So Mia very kindly said that you would bring us provide us with a prompt that we will set for our writers. So have you got something?
I'm going to give you the first prompt. It is Christmassy, and it's going to be no snow. That's
no snow.
So there's no snow where I am, you may have noticed. And if you don't like no snow, you get to use unknown number.
Okay, wow, that's already intriguing me. So yeah. I'm sure lots of people have cogs spinning in their head now, starting with ideas. So yeah, people watching this, please just write whatever you can. There's no particular word count for this. It's just whatever you can come up with, and we will read out some of the responses on the stream. So thank you. Thanks again, Mia, so much for that. Is there anything particular people can look out for from you, either from Deadlines for Writers or from your own personal sort of projects next year?
Not at the moment. We have lots of stuff going on. Our writers are posting their last scenes on at the end of this year, so then we'll see lots of exciting things coming. But the 12 short story challenge is starting in January. The 12 poems challenge is starting. Your first poem is due in the first week of February, and we've got some very exciting 30 days of flash challenges coming up again. So we've got a busy year ahead, and we're going to have lots of fun. So come write.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Mia, so much.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate this moment.
Well, thanks again, Mia. That was fantastic speaking to you and hearing your insights. As I say, they're always inspiring. So hopefully people will get some inspiration for their own novel writing there. Now, of course, Mia has also set a prompt in our interview, and we've received quite a few responses. I'm going to read one of them out to you now. This is by Luna Cross. Luna has a YouTube channel, Midnight Cross X, I believe it's called. So check that out. But here's her response to the prompt. The humid air blew through the gaps in the rusted window. As I peered through the glass, my thoughts grew muddled. Outside, the same events occurred once again. The postman delivered the latest news, likely with the same headline as the day before. I didn't need to check again. I caught my eye and waved, but I was already turning away from the window, not willing to repeat the same behaviours that had already occurred so many times before. In an attempt to distract myself from the repeated reality, I turned on the television. I regretted it when I read the headline, No Snow, and the reporter speaking the same news report I had already listened to. I switched it off again. The truth was, I had already lived this day hundreds of times, and yet still sought out the gap in the loop that would free me from it. And despite my attempts to deviate from the cycle, I would always look out the window once again every morning and notice the fact that there was indeed no snow. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Luna, for that. That more or less wraps us up for this charity stream. We hope everyone's enjoyed the activities. Again, it's been a little bit of a rush, unfortunately, but we've tried our best. So hopefully people have enjoyed what we've put out there. One last reminder to head into the comments and support the charities. Again, it's such a fantastic cause. A lot of them do so well. They all do fantastic work to support homeless people across the world. So, Joe, just to wrap up quickly, what can people do to learn more about Rogue Animal or find out about what's going ahead?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Rogue Animal and more about what we do, just go on to our website, rogueanimalbooks.com, and you'll find an array of novels, comics that you can read for free, and you can also buy some books from our shop on there as well. And if you're an author, you can submit your own stories and come onto the site.
There's no fee either, so if people want to just put their books out there and find a bit more draw more attention to their stories, then Rogue Animal Books is the place to go. We've also got our Facebook group that people can join. It's where most of our activities take place, and it's one of the first places to learn about new events that we're doing. It's Rogue Readers. There'll be a link somewhere for that as well. So with that, yeah, thank you so much to everyone that's joined us. Thanks to Mia, to Pat Marshall, Jerry Salmon, Christopher Cisneros, Boosie and Gwenya. I don't think I've forgotten anyone. I hope that's everyone. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone that's supported this, that's watched this, that's supported us throughout this year. It's been great to do all the things we've been doing, and next year there'll be more exciting things to come. I'm sure there's something else I'm supposed to say, and I can't think what it is. Hang on. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. So, for people who are in the Rogue Readers group, we're probably going to be taking a break now for the end of the year. So, there won't be a lot from us until the new year. But people are still welcome to post their stories or whatever in the meantime. But again, thanks so much for everyone that's supported us throughout this year, and we'll speak to you all again soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.